Hey everyone, today we have a deck tech. It's not going to be a budget deck tech, it's going to be a deck tech on a pretty interesting deck that I found on Reddit a little while ago by a user Flinks, I think is how you pronounce it. I'll link their post in the description. But basically, it's a Vetruvian deck that tries to play the card Pantheran? Pantheran, I think. For free by using all of the Saigon's wish spells. So we start off with Zarek's. Uh, Blood 1 spell will be to summon a 2/2 Iron Dervish, and we have a lot of Dervish buff spells, so this is good synergy with the deck, which is why we chose this over Saj. The first wish just gives a friendly minion 1/1, draws a card. It allows your dervishes to attack the enemy general without dying. It cycles for a card. It's just an easy way to weave in some value for the extra mana you might have on a turn. And it allows some of your minions to get favorable trades. Dunecaster gives a friendly dervish +2/+2. If it's a wind dervish, it doesn't disappear. This is really powerful if you can get the synergy, because basically it gives you 4/3 worth of stats for 2 mana. And since you're buffing something that's already in play, those two of those attack often have rush. So it is split, so it's vulnerable to AoE and all that, but it also allows a dervish that would otherwise die to stick around. So this can get a ton of value if you are able to use it on a wind dervish that's coming out of one of the obelisks. And you really don't want to run this out naked unless you have to, but if you need a secure mana tile, sometimes you just have to run it out because you don't actually have any good 2 drops that contest mana tiles. And that may be a weakness of this deck, so that may be something to look into changing. Shroud, I replaced the what did I replace? I replaced the Siphon Energies with Shrouds. I just thought the Siphon Energy was a little weak right now because of the nerfs, and I had trouble getting my general in melee range, and it was a little easier with the dervishes to land a shroud on something in the back line, so I decided to opt for this. You could probably go either way, but this is what I'm going with for now. We don't have a ton of dispel, so I wanted something that was a little more reliable. Obelisk, play it early, summons dervishes. They can hopefully spawn in a good place and contest mana tiles and contest the board early. And you can buff them up with a Dunecaster or any of the other buffs. It's good with Whisper the Sands, just one of the core cards that we use. Pax, another core card. Play it on turn 1, get the pop for the 2 dervishes, buff them up, make them pretty strong and difficult to deal with. Buys yourself some time. If you can buff them with a first or second wish, you have a pretty big threat. The second wish we have is give a friendly minion +2/+2. It no longer takes damage from generals. So if you can get anything to stick next to the enemy general and just start beating on them, it creates a huge problem for them. It's difficult to remove that without a spell, or unless they have board control, which hopefully you have because you do have a strong early game from the Pax and the Falkius and Dunecaster and things like that. So if you can land us in a good position, you can get a ton of value out of it. It also helps us get a mini combo out. Whisper the Sands summons a wind dervish next to each obelisk. You have 6 total obelisks. You probably won't be getting more than 1 or 2 in most cases. If you have 3 active obelisks, you're probably doing fine. You can play the obelisk and play this in the same turn to get a little rush minion for 5 mana, but sometimes that's the optimal play. It draws a card, so it's never really, really dead. And it's just a pretty strong overall card if for turning the board in your favor for just 2 mana. Because if you can summon 2 or 3 dervishes, you really get a lot of value for just 2 mana. Falkius, 3/3, your general gains 2 attack, takes no damage. This is very, very strong the turn where you have 3 mana, either turn, usually turn 2 you don't usually run it out on turn 2 as turn 1 is player 2, because you're usually not in range of attacking an enemy minion. But if you can get the effect off of this, it's pretty huge swing. Killing something with 4 health and landing a 3/3 is amazing for 3 mana. Also note that you can use this to block damage from other sources. For instance, if you play this and then attack into a Spectral Revenant, you won't take the damage. If you kill an enemy Amaria Healer, you won't take the damage. Earth Sister, no damage. You won't take damage from anything, not just the attack. So it's useful to play around with that. Fireblaze Obelisk gives all your dervishes +1/+1. Even this, if you can't get the dervishes in range, this ends up being pretty decent some of the time, just because you have things like Star's Fury, you have your Bloodborne spell, you have the Pax, you have the Dunecaster, which is also a dervish. So you have quite a few minions that it does buff in addition to its own dervishes that it summons. So this is a very strong card for us, and will just give us more of the dervishes we need, especially with the third wish, which gives a friendly dervish minion +3/+3 in flying. This is huge to surprise people. I've used it just on the wind dervishes to just get a 5/5 rush flying that, even though it goes away at the end of turn, it basically picks off anything. And if you play it on something that's not going to die, it's just a huge beater for 3 mana that can really outmaneuver your opponent, get around taunts, go pick off something in the back line. If you use it to go kill a Hot Seeker in their back line and then have say a 5/4 Dervish, because it was a 5/5 that took 1 damage, it's something they have to deal with. It got some value. Great card. We have Spelljam in the deck. I was thinking maybe of switching this to Sojourner, now that Zenrui isn't everywhere, although we play one Zenrui. I'm not sure which is better in this deck. I think with all the buffs, it's possible that the more health of Sojourner is better and not giving your opponent the draws, although this does more consistently draw you a card because you'll automatically get one at the end of turn. So that's something I might play around with. It's also a little cheaper for people who have some budget concerns, although Spelljam is one of the first crafts I think a lot of people make. So that's something I'm playing around with right now. But Spelljammer just gives us draws, refills our hand. We are kind of an aggro deck, so everything kind of an aggro deck, honestly. Summon a Wind Dervish with Rush in front of each enemy minion in general. This is just a way to push damage or try to clear out the board. Combining with the Fireblaze Obelisks, you can get a ton of damage in, or a ton of clear. You can also throw some wishes on these minions, or Dunecaster one of them. You have a lot of options. It usually summons a good amount of dervishes and can just kind of swing the board. So we only have one. This is a card that I added after changing the list. I removed a Zenrui because it got nerfed. You might want to remove the second one, but it's been useful in some matchups. So something to play around with. Definitely a flex spot along with the Spelljammers and these Shrouds. So something to think about. But I've liked it. Healer. We only play 2 healers. One of the power cards in Vetruvian. You could definitely go up to a third in place of the Zenrui or something like that. Provokes, Dying Wish, deal 5 damage to the enemy general, 5 health to yours. This will keep you alive against aggro decks if they can't push it away. Even if they silence it, it's still a 5/5. Of course, you lose the effect, which is very, very powerful, but still being a 5/5 means they still have to deal with it. It usually takes a couple minions from an aggro deck if they don't kill it. The 5 damage to the enemy general adds up fast, restoring 5 health to you. In addition to the 5 damage they had to put on this to kill it, means that you buy a ton of time. Great card against aggro. Great against pretty much everything. Just a little bit slow if it does get silenced, or if it gets Repulsor Beast or something, or Demonic Lord. So just be aware of what class you're playing against, and don't put all your eggs in the basket of it saving you if there's an easy counter that your opponent might have access to. And then kind of the cornerstone, or not the cornerstone, I don't know, kind of the mascot of this deck, I guess, is the better phrase, is the Pantheran? I'm not exactly sure. It's a 6/6 for 6 mana. They cost 0 if you've cast all the wishes this game. So we run 3 of each wish, and the goal is to be able to drop this for 0 mana. And it's not useful to drop this for 0 mana if you have 9 mana and this is the only thing you play. You want to drop this for 0 mana when you play something else the opponent has to deal with, and then drop this to be something they can't deal with. Because this is just a 6/6 body. It's kind of the purpose Mandrake serves in a lot of our Swarm decks, is that you have a normal turn, but you also drop this. So they'd be able to deal with just your normal turn, but then you have the tempo play of dropping a 6/6 for 0 mana that they can't deal with. And it's very powerful when you can get that to work. As a 6/6 for 6 mana, it's not very strong, but it's also not a useless draw. Late in the game, it's still a high value for a card. It's just not as good as, say, something like a third of Mario Healer. Getting the 3 wishes out is not that difficult, but doesn't happen all the time. So you definitely want to cycle these. You're not generally going to play these early. You're not going to get the hand where you go first wish and the second wish and the third wish. Play this very early. It just doesn't happen that often. But if it does, you could probably steal a game here and there. Really cool card when it works, and this is why we wanted to try out kind of this wish package. And then the Zenrui, it got nerfed, costing 1 more mana really sucks, because you can't steal the low cost minions that you can't play it early enough to steal the low cost minions before they make a huge impact, like the Lantern Fox that comes out on turn 1. You can't generally play this on your turn 1 or turn 2. Turn 2 usually is player 1. You only have 3 mana, and then even if you would manage to take 2 mana crystals, it's still hard to. You can't play this yet. You'd have to wait till your turn 2 and hope to get the mana crystal. It's not generally coming out to turn 3 or 4, and by that point the 2 attack minions generally traded off or have already gotten value. It's still good against Shadow Sister or Sojourner if it's around. Well, there's a few other ones, and the 2 attack minions don't just disappear after the first turn, or the first couple turns, but a lot of the value of the older Zenrui was stealing something very early game and swinging it, because the body isn't that impactful. It's a little more impactful at a 4/4 than a 4/3. It doesn't die as easily, but since the body isn't that impactful, you want to play it when the tempo swing of stealing a 3 mana, 2 mana minion from your opponent is a huge swing, whereas late game it's sort of a swing, but it's not nearly as backbreaking as stealing a Lantern Fox on turn 2, where they just all of a sudden have nothing on the board and you have a 2/4 and a 4/3, and they have to deal with both pretty quickly. And basically a lot of times you would steal the Lantern Fox, and then the Zenrui would be strong enough to trade off with their turn 2 play, and then they were in a position where you just had a Lantern Fox that was getting value, and they had basically you ate 2 of their turns with it. So it's not as good anymore. Might look to replace this as well, but as you can see, we have a few flex slots that we can really look to add something like a Rasha's Curse. I was thinking of adding something like we could look into more Whispers of the Sands, something like Inner Oasis. We have some options. We could even try something like a Psychic Conduit as sort of a mini Zenrui, what it would do. We could try Decays, Allomancers. We have a lot of options, even Nimbuses or Mario Healers, Dominate Wills, all options. But right now this is the list we have, and I have a couple games, and I'll show you them right now.